Thank you very much, everybody. Good afternoon. And it's never easy to be the final speaker before the tea break because some of you look extremely thirsty. And about 30 years ago, I heard the voice of God on the London Underground. And it started me on a path from simply being a believer in faith to somebody who wanted to make a life for building peace. And it was rather a funny encounter. I was just missed my train, and as one does when standing on the underground having missed a train, my eye went across the tracks to a big poster on the opposite wall. No images, just text. And the text said this: "It's not your fault that this country is going down the drain. It's the man standing next to you on the platform." I was looking at that, and just out of my peripheral vision, I thought, he's there. That man is there. So, being British and not wanting to be rude, I tried to sort of, who is this man whose fault it is that the country? And of course, in that very moment, he and our eyes met, and we smiled and realized I can be part of the problem. It's very easy for us to feel that we're part of the solution and you are part of the problem. But in many ways, the journey to peace comes with recognizing I can be somebody else's problem. I can be God's problem, actually, even as we just heard movingly, in his name. I spent a lot of this year in the Balkans, down in Tirana, Albania, and in Montenegro, and North Macedonia, and Serbia, and countries like that. They don't really feature on our radar screen here in London, but UPF has just concluded a major peace summit in Tirana, actually last weekend. And as I visited the capitals of these cities, I began to realize some of the deep narratives of distrust and enmity that still exist. The Balkans is probably, arguably, I would say, the most troubled area of Europe. Winston Churchill once said that it produces more history than it can consume. It was there that the First World War started. During the Second World War, there were terrible, bloody conflicts between partisans, communists fighting Nazis, and every kind of division. And then even in more recent times, the Balkan War, which introduced us to such terms as ethnic cleansing. And today, there are many families who lost a father, a son, or whose mother or grandmother was raped repeatedly by members of another group. And wherever you go, it's just there beneath the surface, the sense that we are the injured, the aggrieved, and they, whether they are the Serbs or the Muslims or whoever they might be, they're the problem. And it was actually an enormous effort to try to convince everybody to come together. Let's come together in Tirana. Let us put these aside, because the truth is that even though the war ended 20 years ago, the peace has not come. Everybody thought that by now, with the benefits of economic development and political freedom and gradual freedom of movement, that the Balkans would be transformed. But it isn't, because this mental, spiritual baggage is still there, and people are stuck. So we worked hard, and we believed that we were making real progress. We managed to persuade Serbian members of parliament to come and sit with members of parliament from other countries. And then, just a week before the event, there was a major disruption. the European Union decided not to even begin talks to admit Albania and North Macedonia into the European Union. Now, I mean, this may be hard to understand here in Britain, but there are people trying to get into the European Union desperately. And this rejection opened up, like the tearing off of that plaster, all the old resentments. And why did this happen? It's because of Serb propaganda, or it's because of this group or that group. And into this cauldron of dissatisfaction and finger-pointing, our UPF founder, Mother Moon, arrived in Tirana. And of course, it was my job to give her a briefing on how things stood. That far from being, ready to hear voices of peace, there are many spoiling for a fight, actually hurting, aggrieved, angry, and ready to blame somebody else. But when it came time for her to speak in front of several of the heads of state and many religious leaders, members of parliament, I was really impressed by the approach she took. She said, actually, this is your great opportunity. When things are going well, when luck seems to be on your side and fortune is smiling on you, it's easy to be a peacemaker. It's easy to be gracious, to be generous, because you feel you have something to give. But what about when that's been taken away? This, of course, is the central theme of the book of Job. When everything is taken away, can you yet practice giving? She said, you don't need to be a member of the European Union to behave as you are. And I would take that a step further today. You don't need to be yet a citizen of the kingdom of heaven on earth to behave as if we already are. There's nothing stopping us. It is time of increasing polarization, of that there can be no doubt. But the people who can solve this problem are not sitting in Westminster. Well, actually, no one's sitting in Westminster right now. Not necessarily, the major political or religious leaders. I mean, we've heard many great names today, and sometimes when I hear them, Mandela, King, Gandhi, and so I feel I'm not like that. If those are the kind of people who have to be peacemakers, there's no room for somebody like me. But I want to leave you with the thought that that is wrong. And if they were sitting here today in the front row, they would tell us, you are wrong. You are a peacemaker. And the starting point is to recognize that you may not just be part of the solution. You could be part of the problem. And if in that humility, you can make a step towards peace, it can come much quicker than we think. So, yes, we're polarized. Sometimes there are disappointments. That, I would suggest to you, is a divine opportunity to show who we really are, the sons and daughters of the Most High God. Thank you.